It made me feel so powerless in my own body. I felt like my body was fighting against me. Hi, you guys. How are you today? Welcome to Via Frequency. I'm Olivia, and I'm so grateful that you're joining me here today. Via Frequency is a channel where we explore the elevation and evolution of human consciousness, as well as come to a point where we can truly realize, recognize, and actualize our already innate wholeness, so that we can better balance our humanity with our divinity and truly walk in our divinity every day authentically and in our power. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about my journey with energy work and with Reiki healing, other types of energetic healing, holistic healing in general, and how I got into this world, in this realm, and why I eventually decided to become trained in energy healing arts and in Reiki myself, as well as the impact that these modalities have had on my life. And this topic was actually requested. I appreciate everybody who's joined me on this journey of starting this channel and really creating this medium to express myself, as well as share my own energy work with you guys. I really appreciate you being here and coming on the journey with me, and I really appreciate having this medium in order to share a piece of my truth and a piece of what has changed my life, because absolutely everything that I've experienced since that great catalyst of energy work into Reiki healing in my life has been completely transformative and has put me and aligned me on such a different timeline than I was on prior, and gave me such incredible, miraculous healing that I certainly did not have access to in my state of mind, in my state of being beforehand. And that's possible for anybody. So this is a very large topic for me, and there's so much I could cover here, so there will most likely be a part 2. So basically, for me, energy healing became a massive part of my life 6 or so years ago now. I had been dealing with a lot of physical health problems, as well as emotional and mental traumas that were holding me in the past, very much holding me either in the past or in the future. Since as long as I can remember as a child, I dealt with very, very extreme anxiety. This anxiety for me basically controlled my life, along with a series of traumas that I experienced in childhood and in adulthood. I eventually came to the realization that I had basically lost my free will to these traumas. And, in spiritual texts, this is oftentimes referred to as our karma, our life experience, the weight of being human, the body itself, and the effect and impact that trauma can have on the body and what we carry along and what we are here now to dissolve and unravel and work through. And these things lead to coping mechanisms of all types, and whether that be food or substance or overworking or other habits, you name it, I was searching for a way out of this anxiety, dealing with these underlying subconscious emotions. And this was far before I had, educated myself about the way the subconscious mind works, or before I began studying any type of spiritual or occult texts or anything of that nature. So at this time, I felt extremely powerless. And that powerlessness was a wound that I had dealt with for many, many years. And it's one of the most painful places to be as a human being. If you have experienced deep trauma, I'm just going to break it to you now. All humans have some level of trauma. We come here and we experience some type of trauma. Nobody's immune from that. There's just varying degrees of it. And there are different levels of sensitivity that a human being can have coming into this experience. And you can be, as a child, you can be like not so sensitive. You can be sort of in the normal mid-range, or you can be extremely highly sensitive. Well, I came into this experience certainly as an extremely highly sensitive being. And although that had certain perks to it, and there were many extrasensory aspects to my childhood, weird abilities to sense things and to feel into things psychically. To me, that was terrifying. I did not know how to cope with having such deep, deep, deep emotions and the blurred lines between myself and others in my life. I did not know that when I was having clairaudience, I was picking up on the unseen, yet I was having this conversation in my mind. I didn't understand any of this. And it deeply, deeply affected me. And the anxiety, the trauma, the sensitivity, it all sort of compiled into this perfect storm. And I was physically affected by this. These energetic phenomena and mental and emotional conditions manifested for me physically. As a child, I dealt with chronic fatigue. I was sick all the time. And that was traumatizing in itself, because I knew that I was experiencing something that was different from the norm. And I often kind of felt like the black sheep or the odd one out, because I struggled in comparison to my peers in order to just fit in. Or I always sort of felt like the square peg in the round hole, because I was very, very different. I was very different just from the social norm. And that created a huge level of social anxiety in me as well. So as time progressed, I definitely developed a handful of unhealthy coping mechanisms to deal with this. Those things just further exacerbate anxiety. It doesn't really matter what avenue you take to cope. If you're not dealing with the root of the trauma, if you're not getting into the core and really attacking the root or resolving it to a point on your timeline where it doesn't follow you into the future, anything you do to suppress or ignore an emotion or a trauma or something you're experiencing in your being, that's going to come back and haunt you, and it's going to come back and bite you. And eventually it can definitely manifest in your body physically, which is what happened for me. So, I experienced a lot of different physical ailments, but what definitely took the cake for me, amidst having other traumatic experiences that sort of cycled throughout my teens and my early 20s, and that happened because of my vibrational frequency. I was stuck with a whole lot of subconscious resistance and subconscious trauma, which bled into my conscious experience, affected my frequency. Constantly being on a spectrum of anxiety allowed for more of that to come in. Eventually, I had a huge life-changing event. I had a collapse in my spine, my lower back at L2, L3. My vertebrae literally collapsed. Now, this is kind of gonna sound crazy, but there was never any reason or definitive cause for this that doctors could find. They thought, okay, well, maybe this is some sort of underlying condition. Maybe there was a bone infection or a blood infection or something like that, but nothing ever showed up on any sort of testing. It was unexplainable. There was no injury that caused this or anything of that nature. What really just happened was I was at work one night and I was sitting at a desk, and I had gotten up and bent down, gotten up again, and within 3 hours from getting on my feet there, I could not move. I was laying on a wooden floor, unable to move. And this was terrifying for me. It was extremely traumatic. I had never experienced back problems in my life. I very young and healthy overall in terms of my musculoskeletal health and everything like that. And all of a sudden I was unable to move, and I was in the most excruciating pain that I could ever imagine. And on top of that, the anxiety of what could possibly be going on with me led me to basically avoid addressing the situation for quite some time. So although I was, I went to urgent care, I ended up isolating myself and basically wishing for the best. And taking a route, I was taking so much ibuprofen during this time, which is one of the worst things you can do to your stomach. I was just coping. I was just trying to hold on and make it. And eventually it got to the point where, yes, I had imaging done. I ended up consulting with multiple neurosurgeons at the time, and I got so many conflicting opinions from the mainstream medical system. Have surgery, don't have surgery. Oh, we would never touch your back in this condition. You need to have surgery now. So many conflicting ideas that I ended up going into basically a freeze state when I was already in this fight, flight, freeze, nervous system, trauma response almost 24/7. And I did nothing for 4 years. For 4 years, I lived with this broken back. My spine had collapsed at L2, L3, and I was very, very limited for what I could do for those 4 years. I had a huge bump coming out of my back, like it was a visible bump where my spine had split. It was definitely an experience that was extremely painful and extremely traumatizing mentally, and it was extremely isolating because I couldn't do things, and it made me feel so powerless in my own body. I felt like my body was fighting against me. And that's one huge lesson through all of this that I have learned, is that the body is never fighting against you. The body is always working for you. It's us that needs to come into alignment with our health on all levels, on all planes. To make a long story short, because this video is already getting way too long, I did end up 4 years later having a surgery that put me back together anatomically. It was amazing. You know, I could walk again normally, I could function again, yet the underlying psychological and emotional roots of that trauma were not magically repaired when the body was repaired. So those anxiety, especially that anxiety and other conditions and that trauma manifested for me physically in other ways. And I started developing very, very debilitating GI issues. And I ended up having a couple other surgeries at that point. And I was becoming like this revolving door in the medical system, yet feeling like I was getting absolutely nowhere. And I found myself on a ton of medication. I found myself at a point where nothing was actually improving. I was able to walk, I was able to operate, but it was like whack-a-mole. When one issue would be resolved, another one would pop right up. And I felt once again extremely powerless and out of control because I had not gone in and repaired my overall frequency and my underlying vibration. So a couple years of getting into these other physical issues, at this point I was really dealing with serious health issues and I was sick of it. I'd had enough, and the anxiety at this point was at an all-time high because now I was dealing with a body that I felt was at total war with me. Flipping through Google one day looking for something to help my anxiety, and I came across Reiki healing. And this is something that maybe I had heard about in a magazine or from a loved one or something, but I really did not know anything about it at the time. And it just happened to be a scenario where I was able to get in for that the same day. And I was basically going into a panic attack that day, which I struggled with as well for many, many years. I went in for this Reiki session and I had one of the most transformative experiences of my life. Within a couple hours, because this was a long session, the practitioner that worked with me was just so attentive and caring and really held the space for the healing to take place that needed to take place and to progress. I ended up having this incredible experience where I went back and in my mind, like I was seeing visions. I was experiencing some of my traumas, re-experiencing them. There was a point in the session where I could feel my heart just bubbling. And that's actually not even my word. That is the Reiki practitioner's word. She said that she could feel my heart chakra bubbling, and I could as well. And I was having these visions. And eventually, when I would go to these Reiki sessions, because I began seeing her weekly at this time, I would have these incredible visions where I was basically healing my trauma mentally on the table, because things would come up for me psychologically while I was having the energy healing. And not only did I find myself feeling lighter, and I found myself feeling like the roads were opening for me, but just a few sessions in, I was able to get off of many, many medications that I had been on for quite some time for physical issues, stomach issues, anxiety, depression, psychological ailments, and all of these things. And it was like I was just able to let them go. And it was incredible to me because I started to realize that I had so much more power. And I started to realize that I was the operant power here. That by reprogramming my energy system and by addressing the root cause of things, I was actually able to peel these layers back from who I was and from my being, and allow my life force to be reinvigorated and reinstated and rebalanced and rejuvenated. I left that first session incredibly inspired, although I did not even know the transformation that would take place from that very first session. But I left and it put me on this path of spiritual awakening. It was a massive catalyst for my really breakthrough spiritual awakening experiences. It liberated so much energy in my body that was probably really condensed and stuck in my lower chakras, and it redistributed that energy was able to liberate up my spine and throughout my being, and to go where it needed to go. I began to stop suppressing things. I began to practice meditation. I learned about meditation. I mean, up until this time, I was for quite some time very resistant to topics like meditation, breath work, holistic healing in general, because I had been so programmed and so indoctrinated with mainstream medical jargon. And there's a place for that. There is a place for that in society, but so many of us, that's all we know. And a great percentage of the time, what's offered in the mainstream medical world can actually be causing a lot of additional issues, side effects, problems. A lot of the treatments that are being offered and the medication, they come with a price. They come with a price, they come with side effects. A lot of them aren't even studied long term. And in this society, we are so blindly led to believe, and if you don't follow the mainstream narrative, you're basically looked at as an outcast or as a conspiracy theorist or as somebody who is crazy. But I'm here to tell you that not everyone has a conventional healing story, and not everybody is going to find that healing in the conventional mainstream setting. Now, having this experience with this Reiki and having this just energetic opening in me, a lot of subsequent spiritual awakenings that led me into this path of really peeling back the layers of myself, my identity, my traumas, my issues. I just delved into the knowledge and began learning as much as I could. And I'm still like that. I'm like a sponge. I love to take in and learn as much as I possibly can, and then integrate that into my life. I just began to learn so much and become so keenly aware of my own inner fragmentation and my own inner ecosystem. We are all universes in ourselves, and there is this ecosystem within all of us that is interacting, that is trying to come into some sort of equilibrium or balance. Without that understanding, and without an understanding of how consciousness works in general, how we can learn to heal ourselves without doing more harm than good at many points, or without having our options open to a more natural and holistic approach, we're oftentimes left not only disappointed, but even in worse scenarios than we turned out with, which was very much my experience. So yeah, perhaps I'm speaking from a biased experience, and I am not putting down anything. I've softened my view a lot over the years. I've depolarized a lot of my thinking because I do see that there's a place for things, but I also see that in our society, we are going through major shifts. levels of consciousness that are evolving. And with evolution comes change. And with change comes a lot of destruction, and it comes a lot of tearing down of the old paradigm and rebuilding of the new. And I believe that we have already begun to see this so intensely in whether it be politics or medicine or our social structure or just society in general. There has been this bubbling of information that is coming out that was not accessible to people before the age of information and before the internet. And with that, so much about holistic healing and energetic healing has been unleashed to the masses. And there's a gift and curse with everything. I think that we run the risk at times in that situation of the knowledge getting watered down, of false information, maybe distortion of practices, and not the true authentic healing being administered, and then perhaps even being given a bad name. So that's always a risk. But when I look at the overall general view of society, I do see a lifting of the veil. And I see so many more people being interested, finding hope and finding faith in themselves, as opposed to being victim to their circumstance, being victim to their past, being victim to their trauma. I spent so much of my life feeling like a victim. I spent so much of my life trying to rebuild the pieces of the destruction that, my own experiences had caused me, and the anxiety that lived within me so deeply. And I'm still peeling back those pieces. I am by no means done. I have a long journey to go. I have so much more to do, and I'm just taking it day by day. And I am unpacking and unpeeling more and more layers all the time. This is a continuous journey, and this is a journey that I will be on until there's nothing left to unpack. For now, I just am still in awe when I look back at stepping into that first Reiki session and how it was such a catalyst for my own transformation and the opening of my mind, and taking me from a point of really being anti a lot of things and being closed off and having such a small mind space. I believe we come in as children oftentimes so open, and then we're indoctrinated, and then we are programmed to believe so many different things, and little by little our minds close. And so many times our dreams close too, and our hopes close too, and our passions and our purposes close off, and what we believe is possible closes off. And a lot of times that leads to further trauma and further pain and further suppression. But when we come to a point when there is a catalyst in life for us to feel different and for us to believe that we can feel different, then we feel motivated to change. We want to reach the next level. We want to reach the next step, and we want to see what is possible in our own realms of potential. And I can tell you that you are infinite. Your potential is infinite. We come here, we are so much more than this physical body. We are so much more than this identity, this ego, and this current self-concept that I have right now, or you have right now. You are so much more than that. Along this path, it's not always ease, and there's not always just flow and everything. There's a lot of times where it's like, oh my goodness, I'm going through this massive ego death, or I'm going through this really dark period. I'm going through this tumultuous, heavy time. There's more healing to do, or there's more beliefs that I need to throw away or adjust, or more parts of me really that I need to integrate. But it's truly about that integration, and energy work allows you to look at life from a new perspective. It allows you to address things on more than just the physical level. It allows you to open the door to see yourself for who you truly are and what you truly are. And at the very essence of this life and at happiness and successful living and growth, there's the knowledge of self. And I believe that this journey is very much a personal journey. Through exploring ourselves personally, we will eventually realize our connection to everything else herein. And that's when life becomes really beautiful. And when your vibrational frequency begins to evolve and adjust to the point where your mind opens up and your view becomes more panoramic and you can see beyond your prior belief systems, your limitations, and everything that was holding you back, that's when you become extremely, extremely powerful. And like I said, it's a journey, it's a process. We're all in different places and we're all on time. And everybody is going through what they're supposed to be going through right now. There's no right or wrong here. It's just experience. And, really expand upon our own spiritual growth. And spirituality to me encompasses absolutely everything. It is the spiritual plane. It is also the physical. The physical is spiritual. This is an all-encompassing life experience. And that's how I like to view my journey. I don't exclude anything from my spiritual path. I incorporate everything. And that's what life is. It's experience. But I truly believe that where we are headed is that knowledge of self, who and what we truly are. And that's a very, very healing thing. And for me, energy work and Reiki was a massive catalyst in terms of putting me on that journey. Everything in life has changed. I have such a fuller view of the world and of myself, and I look forward to very much continuing that. My healing journey, a lot of my physical ailments have disappeared and things pop up and I address them. And probably the biggest shift is that I take everything in now. I feel my feelings. I pay attention to the sensations in my body. I honor what is going on within me, in front of me, around me. And I don't run from it anymore because I know that it's all me. And these powerful realizations can be reached through energy work, through a lot of different holistic modalities, through meditation, through breath work, through all of these practices that I found along my path. And there's so many variations of this. But yeah, I think I'm going to cut the video off here because I've already been talking for so long, because there's so much more I could say on this topic. I really just wanted to make this an introduction in terms of how I came into energy work and the profound effect that it has had on my life and on my personal development, my spiritual evolution, and this journey of enlightenment that we all walk, and the levels of consciousness that we move through as we experience this life. You're here to experience, you're here to live. And all too often we spend so much of our lives just blindly moving along and sleeping. And until we awaken the essence within us that is our truth and that is our power, our inner being that sits within us and guides us, as we can feel so small here, and we are small. Our avatar, our identity, that's just this tiny little piece of us. We are so much more. This is my experience in how I first discovered it. Maybe I will discuss my journey in learning to work with energy, learning to trust my intuition, better understand the nature of this reality and ourselves on an energetic level. I'll work on that. I hope that it was helpful. I hope you enjoyed. And I'll have many more topic videos and energy work videos to come, continuing on this channel. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, please, if this resonated with you, feel free to give me a thumbs up, drop me a comment down below, and hit the subscribe and the little notification bell. It supports the channel, it supports my work here, and I'm really appreciative of you. So until next time, I'm Olivia for Via Frequency, signing out. Ta-ta for now.